In Charles Darwin's autobiography, he wrote, "It at once struck me that under these circumstances, favorable variations would tend to be preserved and unfavorable ones to be destroyed." Here, Darwin is speaking of his theory of natural selection. Natural selection can be defined as a difference between the survival and fecundity of individuals with environmentally favored phenotypes compared to individuals with unfavorable phenotypes. So what is required for natural selection to occur? First, there must be some phenotypic variation in a trait. Second, some variants must survive and reproduce better than others. Third, the variation must be heritable. There are 3 different modes of natural selection that can affect the frequency of a trait. In this presentation, we will be discussing directional selection, stabilizing selection, and disruptive selection. One mode of natural selection is directional selection. In directional selection, environmental pressures make one extreme of a phenotype more favorable than those at the other end of the spectrum. As a result, the population's trait distribution shifts towards this favored extreme. The peppered moths in England during the Industrial Revolution of the 19th century are an example of this mode of selection. Peppered moths are normally white in color. However, there is also a naturally occurring genetic mutation that causes some moths to have black wings instead. These moths often land on lichen, which is a white fungus that grows on trees. White moths are easily camouflaged from predators against the white lichen, while the black moths stand out. This leaves the black moths more prone to predation. This environmental pressure results in peppered moths population in which the white phenotype occurs with much greater frequency than the black. However, with the outbreak of the Industrial Revolution, burning coal caused significant air pollution that killed off the white lichen in many areas, leaving the tree trunks blackened. In these places, the black phenotype became more favorable than the white, as the white moth stood out against the blackened tree trunks and more frequently drew the attention of predators. As generations passed, the phenotypic frequencies reflected the shifted differential success between the black and white moths, and black became the dominant phenotype. We see that natural selection can work in any direction, depending on environmental conditions. Another example of natural selection is stabilizing selection. In stabilizing selection, intermediate phenotypes are favored over the extremes. As a result, extreme phenotypes are seen with less frequency. One clear example of stabilizing selection is birth weight in humans. Statistics show that higher mortality rates are associated with newborns that are under or overweight than those of intermediate weights. Data analysts illustrate that stabilizing selection reduces the variance in birth weight, favoring an optimal mean weight of about 7 pounds. According to a recent study using data from over 8,000 newborns, babies that stray from this average in either direction have decreased odds of survival, the odds growing significantly slimmer the further they stray from the mean. For example, premature babies have a mortality rate of about 8.2%, while the rate in average-sized infants is around 5.2%. Finally, disruptive selection is a type of selection in which extreme phenotypes are favored over their intermediate. One classic example is that of Darwin's finches. Ancestral species colonized multiple islands within the Galapagos, each with unique environmental conditions, such as average seed size. On these islands, seeds of large and small size were readily available, where seeds of intermediate size were scarce. As a result, large and small beaks became favored over intermediately sized beaks. Over time, phenotypic frequencies reflected this environmental pressure. Intermediate beaks became less frequent while smaller and large beaks became more frequent because more of these individuals were able to take advantage of available resources and survive long enough to reproduce.